Hi, my name is Peter Moe, and today we are joined by two Dubliners, Mark McKenna and Gerry Dowling, tour guides at the Little Museum of Dublin, and we will be talking about Christmas traditions in Dublin, Ireland. So first, hi Gerry, hi Mark.
Hi.
Hi Peter, how are you?
Good. What is the Little Museum of Dublin? I've never actually been there.
The Little Museum of Dublin was opened in 2011 on Culture Night 2011, which is in September of the year. It was primarily done just to introduce people of Dublin to a sense of their own history, told through artefacts and various objects that they have throughout the museum. And they put a request out for people to send in some of these artefacts. There could have been milk bottles from the millennium in 1988. And they responded in all sorts of ways. And now we have 5 rooms, I think, of artefacts and objects which tell the history of Ireland through a kind of a social sense, not just a historical sense. We have things there, documents from that have historical memories of them, like photographs of paintings of Michael Collins, who was an Irish leader in 1922 who led for independence of Ireland. And we tell the story of Dublin over the centuries, from the time the Vikings arrived from your part of the world up to modern day. Most of the emphasis is probably on the 19th and 20th centuries of Dublin. So we tell it through that. And it gives people an idea of how people lived, the social background of the city, the poverty in the early 20th century, the way that we stayed neutral during World War II, and the detrimental effect it had on the country with emigration in the late 50s and early 60s, through the rise of the kind of economic changes in the 60s, right up to the cultural changes in the 80s, when we elected a first female Irish president, Mary Robinson. And we tell that story and the changes since then that have happened socially and economically through the country. And told in a humorous way. Like it's not a very, very boring history. It's like almost a theatrical piece as well. So we interact, we have jokes, and so it's an entertaining 29 minutes. We say 29 minutes. Depending what people ask, it can be 40 minutes, 45 minutes. But most people are entertained. And then we also have a room dedicated to fans of U2, where we have a lot of U2's artifacts, including a lot of early photographs and various things. And seemingly U2 visited the museum and nobody even recognized them. And the only way we know that is they left us some drawings of handprints and signatures, and they are now framed and put on the wall. Plus, we also have their manager. Plus, we also have their manager, Paul McGuinness's. They way back in the late 80s, I think, they were given the freedom of the city of Dublin, and they were given beautiful glass. They were like a little tree or something like that, glass tree. And seemingly the only intact one that was left
was a Joshua tree, Mark.
The Joshua tree, that's what it was.
There you are.
Yeah. And seemingly the only intact one left was Paul McGuinness, and his wife gave it to the museum because she felt it was probably going to be safer there because bits of it. So
she was actually tired of dusting it.
Yeah. So it's one of the more valuable things we have in the museum, alongside our very, very first edition of James Joyce's Ulysses. We have a first edition of that. The book that not many Dubliners have read, but most of them claim to have read some part of it at some point.
I think so, even I've read a bit of it at some point.
I think we've all read
a unique feature is that you can come to the Little Museum and you can say that you read the last page of Ulysses, because that's the page that we leave open all the time.
Nice.
Yeah. Mark has given a very good encapsulation of the museum. It does show the change from the 1700s through the revolution, as he said, and it focuses on the social, political, literary and cultural life of the city, as well as the economic development of the city through that time. And it's just to give people a flavour of what Dublin's about. Number one, for visitors, and secondly, for Dubliners themselves. It's a very nostalgic trip. It brings back memories of childhood and events and things that have happened in their own lives.
It's basically a trip down memory lane in terms of for Dubliners.
That's right.
And for us visiting, it's just an insight into how Dublin came to be the city it is now, maybe. And
that's
what the experiences were for people. Yeah.
It's very much a people's museum.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about thank you. The interesting thing about it is that it is housed in a Georgian building. And Dublin is very, very much a Georgian city. King George III, King George II, King George III. And a lot of the architecture, the changes in Dublin happened around the mid-1700s. The house itself dates from 1776. So it's quite a lovely step back, because all these Georgian buildings, they were really homes for a lot of the wealthier people in the cities at the time. And there's an awful lot of Dublin people have grown up seeing these beautiful streets of Georgian buildings and never had a chance to go into them, because they were either inhabited by people who were very, very wealthy, or when they moved on or the families died out or moved somewhere else, they were taken over by businesses, like a lot of solicitors' businesses, law businesses, ad agencies, accountants. So a lot of people, where they've seen these buildings, have never been past the reception areas of these rooms. So for a lot of people, it's an absolute pleasure to actually look around an old Georgian building that still has an awful lot of the original features still in it. So that is also a joy as well for people to be able to step around that.
I can very much imagine that. I've been in Dublin a few times, and I mean, you see these buildings everywhere. I've also wanted to go in, but it's nice that I know now where I can find a place where I can actually visit.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Do you have any things related to Christmas in the museum, or do you have any experiences?
I was going to say there, Peter, that right through to the 1930s, it was a family home, back from the 1770s, and it became an office. So in many ways, it still remains intact in the style and form of a family home. It has reception rooms, very large reception rooms, quite ornate ceilings, and then the upper rooms are bedrooms. But we keep it in many ways like a family home. So at Christmas, we do generally have the Christmas tree. We've decorations around the house. We dress a little bit festively as guides, and we continue to make people welcome. We also have a scheme whereby people can become members of the museum. It's just a contribution, a subscription on an annual basis. It's only €30, not very significant, but people can come in and out as often as they like a family home. And at Christmas then, we have a gathering for our members of mince pies and mulled wine or ordinary wine and a bit of entertainment. It's just something we do every Christmas.
So I have a question then. Minced pies, is that something you eat normally in Ireland for Christmas? Or
yes, it is a particular Irish, and dare I say also English Christmas feature. What it is basically either puff pastry or shortbread pastry with a combination of dried fruit and a spirit put into it as filling. And baked in the oven for about 20-25 minutes. They are delicious.
I thought it would be something with meat.
No. Actually, yeah. No. It's a if you like, it's a mush of fruit and spices, as Marcus just said, and a little bit of spirit put together, and it's provided as filling. So it's sweet. It's not as like you would call it a meat dish. It's a dessert dish.
It's minced fruit then. So
yes, exactly.
Why it gets
exactly.
And it just gets the name of minced fruit. Actually, really lovely. And a lot of people like those with a little bit of cream on them. The whipped cream or squirty cream.
Cream is always nice.
I just on the mince pies, I can always remember as a young lad, when you go to someone's house, the first thing you'd be presented would be the mince pies and maybe a piece of the Christmas pudding and the cake, and to be asked to try it. And you always very politely says it's really nice, it's lovely. And the mother or the ladies would say, of course, oh, it's really nice, that's very tasty. But on the way home, you might find the real opinion, well, it was a bit dry, or there could be a bit more fruit in those tarts. And, but we wouldn't dare be offensive.
No, always polite.
Yes. I think that's one of the things of Christmas in families, that they all have their own traditional recipes for Christmas pudding or Christmas cake. And it's one of the joys I always remember, like myself and my sisters when we were growing up, when my mother would make the Christmas pudding, was everything mixed into a bowl. And there was always like a few bottles of Guinness put in, because one of the few times you see bottles of Guinness around the place. And you put the Guinness into the cake and you mix the whole lot. And the big pleasure was if your mother left some of the mix in the bowl, that you got the chance to eat the mix before it had even been cooked, because it was absolutely delicious. It's something we haven't done in
the question. Then why did you cook it?
I know, but I think it was just such fun of watching your mother bake do all the mix and all the fruit going in and all the various the whole mix itself was absolutely just incredible. But it just tasted lovely, so you could really look forward to that cooking away in the oven, like over the Christmas, the couple of days leading up to Christmas.
And you'd have the smell of it lingering through the house, and
exactly.
You get hungrier and hungrier. And is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? Can we have some? No, we have to take it out and let it cool. Yeah. Very important cooling. Yeah. It sat on a rack for hours, and then you might have a corner of it. And then it was wrapped and put away. The cake or the pudding might have been prepared a month in advance. It was wrapped and put away. Right. And then a week before Christmas, it might be taken out, and a knife or a knitting needle, in fact, would be stuck into it, and a bottle of whiskey or brandy would be taken out, and a little bit of spirit would be poured in to add to the flavour. So it was the mothers and housewives were very, very proud of their preparation, and it was a big thing to have the best possible meal they could possibly put on the table. So the baking of the cakes and the icing of the cakes as well, Mark, was another big thing.
Right.
That was another one where you sat around the table and you watched the mother putting the marzipan on, and then the icing, and then the little decorations, and she might have a little Santy in a hidden drawer somewhere that you might put on, and beading, and really decorate it, and really prepare the food. But one of the big things about Christmas was that even in times of extreme economic difficulty or poverty, every woman did the utmost she could to put the best meal possible of the year on her table. And there was a huge amount of preparation and planning went into it. As you've heard just there, the cakes were prepared, but also the other part was getting the turkey, and that in its own way was a quest in itself. Because in Old Dublin, and Mark will remember this too, that the turkeys were hung outside the butchers' shops on rails, hanging feet tied to the rail and head first down. And That's you went along, and the woman you were brought along as a young lad, come on, I'm buying the turkey. You went to the butcher's, the mother looked and she said, I'll have that one. Would that feed 4 or would that feed 6, or what size is it? It would then be taken down by the butcher from the rail, brought into the shop, and he would proceed to carry out the necessary works of cleaning the innards and cutting the neck off and preparing it. It was then duly packed, and you were given the job of carrying it home and told, don't you dare drop it. But that was part of the housewives' preparation for Christmas.
And the other thing there as well, when the turkey was ready, was putting the stuffing in. Everybody had their own recipe for stuffing. Yeah. And you would go to the pork butchers and you get some, what they call white pudding. Like the blood sausage, big rings of white pudding. And you'd mix that up with all your spices and some grains. And everybody had the sage.
Breadcrumbs,
breadcrumbs and the various other things. And everybody had their own. My mother had her own recipe for the stuffing. And you'd look forward to that on the bit of stuffing on the on the day. I believe at one stage, before turkeys were popular, that the goose
Yeah.
was very popular. And may I
I
tell
imagine,
yeah,
I imagine that makes sense because turkeys are from the US,
That's
yeah,
right.
from the Americas, so it
Yeah.
would have been, yeah, I could imagine it being goose beforehand.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Goose
right.
is still the thing in Denmark,
yeah.
or
Is
duck
it?
or pork.
Can I tell you? Permit me to tell you a story from my childhood? Um, some friend of my father's told us that he had geese on his farm back home. And my mother asked him, "Oh, would you bring us up a goose for Christmas?" So he brought up a goose. She had expected it to be dead and ready to be prepared. It was actually a live goose. We had only a garden, so we had to put the goose out in the garden. My mother couldn't even go out and hang her clothes because the goose would attack her.
Goose
It,
are very aggressive. Geese
yeah,
are very
it,
aggressive.
it used to attack its own reflection in the back window. And eventually, my father arranged for a local butcher to come around and get the goose ready for Christmas. And the goose was cooked and prepared and set up for dinner. And myself and my sisters wouldn't eat it because we had seen the goose going around for days beforehand. And we felt at this stage, because we had seen the goose alive, we couldn't eat it dead. So that was a disastrous Christmas. So we had loads of relations coming around and being fed loads of goose because we had so much left over. It was only my mother and my father ate the goose. The rest of us wouldn't touch it. But that's one of the strangest Christmases I think we had. I think the idea of getting a live goose to be kept in an inner, not an inner city, but a city central garden was quite, because you could hear it honking at night and everything. It was really strange. But
They are kept as guard dogs
Yeah.
or as like guard animals many places because they are so loud
Yeah.
and so aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't enjoy the goose. My mother had a cousin down the Westmeath in the country, and they bred turkeys. So we used to get a turkey delivered to us, all packed and delivered. But the interesting part of this, there's always in the inside of the turkey there would be a dozen eggs, safely transported by courier. Or the bus service at the time, rather than the DHL type scenario. But it would be safely arrive. A turkey would arrive about 4 days before Christmas with a dozen eggs safely inside in the belly.
All right. Well, I mean, it does have a lot of meat and stuff to take the brunt of any force.
Absolutely.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I've never heard it before, I have to say.
Yeah.
That's interesting, though.
Yeah. Another traditional one now with Dubliners growing up, and to this day still popular, but except for this Christmas, it's very hard to do it, is the visit to a Santa's grotto, and any of the department stores in Dublin. It would have been Cleary's, Switzer's, and there used to be a Pim's on George Street, which is long gone. But you would queue up to visit Santa, and you'd go into they'd make up a little grotto, and you'd be given a little present. I think for me, Cleary's was always the one that we went to because he was somewhere downstairs. But Cleary's at that time was quite an amazing department store because they used to have these little containers that they'd put the change into, and they'd pull a little wire and it would zoom across the right across the whole department store into wherever the cashier was at the end in the little office at the end.
So
for me, watching those was great, and the little suction pipes that they put the change into, and it'd be sucked up to some other department store. But that was one of the things. And Switzer's, I think they used to give you a little badge. I've been to Switzer's. I've been to Switzer's Santa, so you could go around with your Switzer Santa badge. And it's one of the things we actually have in the museum. We have those little badges on display as well. So you can see that was Switzer store, unfortunately, is gone. It's no more. It was taken over by the store across the road called Brown Thomas. And they moved into there at the time. But the other thing about Switzer's as well was their window display. They used to put on fabulous window displays. And it was often just a trip into town just to see Switzer's window. And for
So
kids, it
it's
was a
it's
real
literally an
delight.
attraction that you should visit in Dublin. Would be the window displays then for
Completely
Christmas.
amazing, amazing displays every year.
We
A lot of
as
the
kids.
departments. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, as children, we always loved Cleary's because they gave better Santa presents than anywhere
They
else.
did.
Yeah,
They did
You got
indeed.
yeah,
presents.
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh,
And
Yeah.
Switzer's window display, Peter, that very much was, apart from the Christmas theme, it also had themes from fairy tales, Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, the Grimm brothers fairy tales. So there'd be the Little Mermaid, there might be Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, various. So it was actually hugely attractive, and there used to be queues around just to look at the window. A lot of us as
oh,
kids didn't like going into Switzer's because they didn't give you a present. They gave you a badge and they took your photograph. But what use is a photograph, for
Exactly.
heaven's
Yeah.
sake? And I don't know, Mark, if you remember, there was another store, Brown Thomas, that took over Switzer's. They used to cross the road, but they were the same. They had pretty mean on their presents, but they
Yeah.
also gave you a letter, a reproduction of a letter from the New York Times that somebody had written to the editor asking, Dear Sir, is Santa Claus real? And somewhere in their editorial staff had comprised a big, long letter. And you got this letter. Now, as children, you couldn't read it yourself. But your dad and mum took great pleasure in reading this and then telling you, now you have to go to bed and you have to be very good because Santa's watching you.
all right. So it's a story on how to behave for Christmas, basically.
It
That
was
was handed out.
basically what Santa had to. It's very logical. I'm sure somewhere in some archive it can be Googled.
I think they've replaced that with the elf on the shelf now, where the elf looks after the kids and makes sure
Right.
that they stay good before they,
All right.
this is
Yeah.
the thing. But the interesting thing, Peter, as well, is that Christmas is celebrated on Christmas Day itself, on the 25th.
Right.
The Christmas Eve is really everybody just getting ready. You meet up with friends, probably in town for a drink or two. A lot of the public service, the transport and that shuts down probably early in the evening. So a lot of people don't stay out too late or to stay out locally. But it's Christmas Day is when you actually open your presents and you give the presents to everybody else. And Santa comes Christmas night and the kids wake up in the morning with when Santa's left them all their presents. So that's where we're different. The UK is the same. That's where we're different from the rest of Europe, is that the Christmas Eve is just the preparation for the full day of the 25th. And then the day after it's St. Stephen's Day, the 26th, is often when people go out and visit friends and families or relatives. They just go out for a walk
All right.
to walk off the Christmas dinner.
That's what we do.
Yeah. And from that point onwards, and they're the important days, probably the Christmas Day and Stephen's Day. And Christmas Eve is just kind of a preparation of maybe meeting a couple of old friends. And there's often...
And all the things to come.
I think... I think Marcus capsulated it there. I think Christmas for Ireland, we tend to capsulate the social gathering of Christmas, the family gathering, the social occasion, and the religious festival, and we tend to blend them all together. And so that rather than in some other European countries, it tends to break it down. Like you have one day for St. Nicholas in some countries. You have Little Christmas on the 6th of December in other countries. I remember that in Spain they tend to give presents on that day rather than on Christmas Day. And in other countries, then the family celebration tends to be on Christmas Eve. But we in Ireland have tended to bring it all into one day and focus a lot on the one day. As Mark says, Christmas Eve tends to be a lot of gathering with friends and frantic last minute shopping for presents. And in Dublin, Grafton Street tends to be a gathering place. Where people tend to just go in for the buzz and the atmosphere and the lights. And occasionally you might kind of fella called Bono or The Edge or playing or singing for a while, or you might find the Coronas or Glenn Hansard or some of these coming into town and just putting on an informal busk on the street for a little while during the day.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. It is. It is. It's great. Creates a really fabulous buzz on the day. And so people kind of look forward to it. The issue is, of course, in the current year with Corona, we're all going to be social distance. So I don't know where Bono is going to stand to do his song this year. But that kind of is a part of it. The other thing that happens in Dublin City on the streets is in front of the Mansion House in Dublin, which is the Lord Mayor's residence. For over the past 30 to 40 years, we've had what we call a living crib. It's where the farmers bring in a donkey and maybe a cow or two and sheep and goats and put them in as part of a crib in front of the Lord Mayor's residence.
The nativity scene.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's an opportunity for families and particularly city children to go and see the animals that they might not see normally roaming around the streets. The country kids would be used to them in their fields. So it's that kind of.
Unless you have a goose in your backyard.
Well, you could have a few geese running up and down. Yes, a few years ago the sheep did escape, and there was a good run down Dawson Street after them. But that's another piece.
Some places have the running of the bulls. Some places have.
Yeah, we have the running of the sheep. Exactly. Now our difficulty is we have a tramway system called the Lewis, so there'd be a fair scatter between the Lewis and the sheep nowadays. But yeah, they're just city. The street scenes can be quite good, and the city council and the traders make a big effort in lighting up the streets and creating a good atmosphere around.
Cozy Christmas atmosphere around.
Absolutely. But then, as Marcus says, people tend to go home early, and I remember one of the traditions that used to be. And I suppose it still lives in certain families and around the country, is to place a candle in a window in your house. And generally, it would be about 6 o'clock in the evening. And traditionally, the youngest child in the house would light the candle. And it came from the old notion to put a light in your window so that the traveller or the family member coming home late could find your house and join you for Christmas.
Oh, that's a lovely thought.
And
that's really lovely.
That's one of the traditions that I remember. And you'll still see, even in my locality, some of the older families still remember it. And even I, with my children, while they were living here with me, used to do that. And it was just a nice way to say, right, now we're home. Now we're starting Christmas and we're going to enjoy it. And that was the way we started our if you like, our Christmas in the home.
That's
interestingly, lovely. When I said about Mary Robinson being the first female president of Ireland, when she went into Áras an Uachtaráin, which is the president's residence in the Phoenix Park, she put a candle in the window with the idea, that's basing on that same idea, because at the time she was elected president, there would have been a high amount of emigration in the country. And that was for the traveller who came back to Ireland, that there was a light always welcoming them. And we mentioned that actually in the Little Museum. We have a little box with her quotation engraved on it as well. So we show people that sometimes when we mention Mary Robinson. But another tradition as well that has kind of changed a bit, but Gerry and myself would remember growing up, is December the 8th was a religious holiday and a lot of the schools were closed. And a lot of people used to come up from the country to shop in Dublin, and they would arrive up. And it was the one day that Dubliners stayed out at the city centre because it would have been just a whole invasion of what we call cultures. Overrun by people from the country. And they'd be up shopping in Cleary's was always the one that we would head for, and to get all the bargains, to go back on the trains and the buses or the cars, whatever way they come up with. Now that has largely changed because it's Christmas nearly starts sometime in November. People starting, but that was a time, and you always felt when December the 8th had passed, that was the real time for Christmas. Because I know now Christmas pretty much starts the day that the Halloween weekend finishes. That's driven by commercial forces rather than any kind of nostalgic forces. But as growing up, I always felt Christmas just started then, December the 8th. And you felt you're really into the Christmas atmosphere at that point.
What holiday is it on December the 8th?
December is
the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, I think.
that's
Was
right.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a church
Religious.
holiday. It's a Catholic church holiday, but it kind of grew it grew into the tradition that country towns and local areas would close down, and literally they all get up to Dublin, as they'd say, and get the bargains, and get their shot in. So we Dubliners, we were the Jackeens. They called us Jackeens. We called them Culchies, but we stood back and let them have it. And after that, then though, we warmed up and enjoyed the city going forward. But coming back to Christmas Day, it tends to be very much a family day. You can have 3-4 generations. You visit the granny, you visit the grandparents, you visit your sisters, they might come round to you. So there's a lot of that. And dinner would probably be sometime early afternoon. And then you relax with drinks and right into the evening time. So it became very much a quiet evening in a lot of cases, but a fair amount of spirit, though, consumed. So it was quite pleasant. One of the other things that went on, there were hardy souls in Dublin who love to go out for a swim on Christmas Day. And just outside Dublin, near Dunleary, we have a place called, a bathing spot called the 40-foot. And on Christmas Day, it is packed. It is jammed. There are people up to 80 odd years of age going out there for their Christmas Day swim. So that's one of the traditions that happen on Christmas Day in Dublin. And another one that's been going on for a number of years as well. People who run, they go for a run in the Phoenix Park, which is a large park in Dublin. It's called the Goal Mile, and a lot of people do it sponsored for different charities. But they're two active traditions that have grown up in about the past 30 to 40 years in Dublin.
Okay. I have one question here. I need to answer it.
Builds an appetite for the dinner. Go on ahead. Sorry.
Well, it truly does. The people who jump out in the water, do they have a sauna when they get up?
No. They have an Irish reviver. It could be a hot whiskey or a hot toddy, as we call it ourselves here, or indeed a hot coffee. But no, and most people, many of the people going in, they're not wearing wetsuits, right? It is a dive into the sea, the Irish Sea, and the temperature can be anything from 2 degrees down to -3. But you do jump in, you get in, you come out, you shiver, you wrap yourself up. It is an open bathing space. It does not have sheltered accommodation. You're on the side of the rocks in Sandy Cove, and you just wrap yourself up warm. You put on your clothes, and I haven't heard of anybody dying yet from their Christmas swim.
No, but it's very much a thing in Scandinavia with saunas. But we, of course, we do similar things as you do. We have a lot of very popular winter bathing in the Nordics.
Yeah, swimming has become a thing.
Yeah.
But
so one last question though. So what do you leave out for? Do you leave anything out for Santa just to?
As a child, you you go through it. You leave him a mince pie, and
glass of milk.
Used to be a glass of milk, and you left him a bottle of whiskey beside it. So if he chose to throw a drop of whiskey into the milk, so be it. It's getting a bit cold, traveling around at night, and you'd leave some carrots for the reindeer as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah. So that was the way we did it. Can I tell you about one other Christmas tradition? Just a moment. We had in Ireland a tradition called the Wren Boys around the country, and they would come out on Stephen's Day, the day after Christmas, called Boxing Day in England, Stephen's Day here in Ireland, and they would have been a throwback to, I suppose, a pagan festival, and they would go out and they would dress up, go around, play music from house to house, collect money, and then go drinking on the strength of the money they received. But here in Dublin, it's in one of the small suburban villages called Sandymount. About 30 odd years ago, the tradition was revived in Dublin. So we have on Stephen's Day, from about midday in Sandymount, a tradition of wren boys or mummers. They would have called them mummers in England. They would go with music, create Irish and traditional music, and they would travel around. In that area, there's a lot of hotels, so traditionally they went from hotel to hotel, collected money for charity, came back to the Sandymount village green, and a carnival atmosphere went on there till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's just a reawakening, if you like, after Stephen's Day. And Sandymount is also down by the coast, so you could have a good brisk walk as well. That's just one
sounds like good fun.
Yeah, my sister lives in Sandymount there, and she has always brought my nieces and nephews down there. Well, they're old enough now to go they're in university now. I don't think they're that interested now. But that was one of the big things that they did, was to take them out and down to watch the Wren Boys, and they loved it. And so the atmosphere was always great. They really loved it, and became a real tradition for them growing up. So they would have grown up in the time that was reintroduced. So yeah. Well remembered there, Gerry. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
I've been there, brought the kids there, and they always ask to go back.
Yeah.
But that's lovely. I love those kinds of traditions being revived and kept alive, basically. Well, I have to say, though, thank you very much. This has been incredibly informative. And again, I can't wait to, now go and listen to famous Irish musicians just playing in the street. And then secondly, waiting till the 26th to go out and seeing the Wren Boys.
There's actually
don't forget to come into the Little Museum of Dublin, Peter.
Of course, I will
have
forget.
A great welcome there. Don't worry.
I just want to say, Peter, just as a finish, that there's quite some good stuff on YouTube in relation to Sandymount and the Wren Boys in Ireland.
I'll definitely check that out.
And can we recommend a story by James Joyce called The Dead in his book The Dubliners, which describes an old early 20th century Dublin. The whole book takes place the whole story takes place over at Christmas in the early 1900s.
Early
1903 or 1904.
Yeah.
Worth reading if you want to catch up on some old traditions. Thank you very much, Peter.
Sounds lovely. So a bonus info there on Christmas reading. Thank you very much. It's been lovely, both. I mean, I can't wait for Christmas.
Very good.
I'll have to see if I can for next year also prepare my own mince.
Yeah.
And can we also say to you, Peter, Nollaig Hunna Ditt.
Nollaig Hunna Ditt.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Okay. Thank you very much.